The air inside the sedan tasted of ozone and unlit matches, heavy with the promise of an ending. Outside, the city wept a freezing rain, blurring the neon signs of the financial district into streaks of bleeding light. Elara gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles protruding like polished ivory beneath her skin. In the backseat, two industrial-grade butane cylinders rested beneath a thick wool blanket, silent passengers waiting for their cue. She didn't feel the biting cold seeping through the cracked window. She didn't feel the phantom weight of the iron cuffs that had bruised her wrists exactly 45 days ago. All she felt was a profound, crystalline emptiness, a void where a hopeless, romantic fool used to live. She stared at the subterranean exit of the Grandier Empire headquarters. He would be coming out soon. The man who had kissed her under the Parisian moonlight, the man who had woven a crown of lies to place upon her head, the man who had sold her life to buy his own. She exhaled, her breath pluming in the frigid cabin. Tonight the debts would be settled. Tonight the ledger would bleed. It felt like a lifetime ago when Elara Sterling believed in the fairy tale. At 26, she was a savant in the world of corporate finance, brilliant, tireless, and devastatingly naive. She had caught the eye of Julian Croft, the enigmatic CEO of the Grandier Empire. Julian wasn't just powerful, he was a gravitational force. With eyes the color of bruised storm clouds and a smile that seemed to understand her deepest, unspoken desires, he bypassed her professional defenses entirely. Their courtship was a whirlwind of stolen glances across mahogany boardrooms, late-night dinners in private alcoves, and whispered promises against the velvet sheets of his penthouse. Julian made her feel like the center of his vast, untouchable world. "You see the numbers, Elara," he had murmured one evening, tracing the line of her jaw with a thumb that smelled faintly of expensive scotch and cedar. "But I see the poetry in them, I see you." Blinded by the intoxicating cocktail of first love and unprecedented career validation, Elara accepted when Julian named her the chief financial officer of his crown jewel. Maison Etoile, a multi-billion-dollar luxury development in the heart of Paris. It was his dream project, he told her, and he only trusted her to guard it. She threw herself into the role, eager to prove worthy of his absolute faith. But the golden cage soon revealed its rusted bars. The discrepancies began as whispers, a delayed audit here, an unauthorized transfer there. Elara spent her nights buried in encrypted ledgers, the romantic haze slowly dissipating under the harsh fluorescent lights of her office. She tracked the phantom capital, $2 billion. It was a labyrinth of forged letters of undertaking, unsecured guarantees issued by bribed banking officials, all funneled through shell corporations to cover the Grandier Empire's colossal, failing debts. The realization hit her not with a bang, but with a sickening, hollow thud. The authorized signatory on every fraudulent document, the sole name bearing the legal weight of the deception, was hers. Julian hadn't promoted her out of love or respect. He had handpicked a scapegoat. He had kissed her, held her, and whispered vows of a shared future, all while methodically constructing her gallows. Desperate, suffocating under the weight of the betrayal, Elara turned to the only other person she trusted, Silas Thorne. Silas was Julian's executive assistant, but to Elara, he had been a confidant, a sounding board, a fiercely loyal friend who had often teased her about her office romance. She rushed to his apartment, the rain soaking her silk blouse, clutching the hard drive that contained the damning evidence. Silas poured her a glass of brandy, his face a mask of sympathetic concern. "We'll fix this, Elara," he promised, his voice a soothing balm. "We'll go to the authorities tomorrow, you're safe here." She drank the brandy, it tasted bitter metallic. Within minutes her limbs grew incredibly heavy. As the room began to tilt, the bedroom door opened. Valerie Quinn, the perpetually smiling head of human resources for the Grandier Empire, stepped out. Valerie wasn't holding a severance package. She was holding Elara's company laptop, the screen reflecting the progress bar of a complete data wipe. "You always were too smart for your own good, sweetie," Valerie crooned, her voice dripping with artificial saccharin. Elara tried to stand, but her legs refused the command. She looked at Silas, searching for the friend she knew, but found only a stranger checking his Rolex. "Julian sends his regards," Silas muttered, not meeting her eyes. The wail of police sirens pierced the night before Elara entirely lost consciousness. She awoke in a holding cell, the smell of ammonia and stale sweat replacing the cedar and scotch of Julian's penthouse. The ensuing weeks were a blur of flashbulbs, screaming headlines, and agonizing humiliation. The media branded her a seductress, a mastermind who had manipulated the handsome, grieving CEO to fund her lavish lifestyle. Julian played the victim flawlessly on national television, wiping away a single perfect tear as he spoke of his misplaced trust in the woman he loved. Valerie testified to Elara's erratic behavior. Silas provided doctored emails. Bail was eventually posted by a distant relative, but the Elara who walked out of the precinct was not the same woman who had been dragged in. The brilliant analyst who believed in love and meritocracy had died on the cold concrete of cell block 4. In her place stood a hollowed-out shell, fueled by a singular, freezing purpose. She didn't weep, she didn't scream. She simply observed. She observed Valerie dining at Michelin-star restaurants. She observed Silas driving a brand-new Porsche. And she observed Julian continuing his reign, untouched and unbothered, moving on to his next acquisition. The legal system was a rigged game played by men who owned the board. Elara knew she was looking at 20 years in a federal penitentiary. The hard drive was gone. The paper trail was buried. She had no voice, no credibility, and no future. But she had a car, and she had nothing left to lose, which brought her to the freezing rain, idling outside the subterranean garage. The heavy steel grate of the parking exit rattled, rolling upward to reveal the sleek, predatory nose of Julian's black Mercedes Maybach. Elara shifted her sedan into drive. She watched the Maybach pause at the edge of the sidewalk, waiting for a gap in the late-night traffic. Through the tinted glass, she could just make out the silhouettes. Julian in the back, leaning forward, Silas in the driver's seat. Elara didn't slam her foot on the accelerator in a frenzy. She pressed it down with the calm, measured precision of a pianist striking the final, devastating chord of a concerto. The sedan surged forward, tires biting into the wet asphalt with a violent screech. The distance between the two vehicles vanished in a breath. Silas turned his head at the last possible second, his eyes widening into white saucers of terror as the headlights of Elara's car flooded the Maybach's cabin. Julian didn't even have time to look up from his phone. The impact was cataclysmic. Metal tore into metal with a deafening, agonizing shriek. Elara's sedan slammed into the passenger side of the Maybach, driving the luxury vehicle sideways across the slick avenue, pinning it brutally against the reinforced concrete pillar of the overpass. The airbags deployed in a cloud of white powder, but Elara barely registered the bruising force against her chest. She tasted blood. The world was spinning, a chaotic blur of shattered safety glass and the overwhelming stench of ruptured fuel lines. She turned her head, fighting the ringing in her ears. The front of her sedan was crumpled like discarded foil, buried deep into the flank of Julian's car. Through the spiderweb cracks of her windshield, she saw him, Julian. He was pinned beneath the crushed roof of the Maybach, his immaculate suit ruined, his face a mask of shock and agony. He looked at her. For the first time since they met, the smug, untouchable superiority was gone. There was only raw, unadulterated fear. Elara smiled. It was a terrifying, beautiful thing, a smile born of absolute closure. A spark from the grinding undercarriage found the pooling gasoline. The fire ignited with a ferocious whoosh, a brilliant, hungry orange blooming beneath the wreckage. The flames licked at the rear doors of Elara's sedan, dancing toward the wool blanket in the backseat. Julian's mouth moved, perhaps screaming her name, perhaps begging. Elara just closed her eyes, letting the phantom memory of his kisses burn away in the rising heat. She had loved a monster, and the price of that love was her life. But she was the one writing the final entry in the ledger. The fire reached the butane cylinders. The night sky ruptured. A blinding sphere of incandescent white and roaring gold consumed the overpass, turning the freezing rain into instant steam. The shockwave rattled windows for blocks, a thunderous declaration of vengeance that drowned out the city's indifferent hum. In that spectacular, devastating inferno, the liar, the traitor, and the avenger were reduced to the very same ash. The flames eventually died, but the embers of Elara's final act sparked a blaze no amount of corporate bribery could extinguish. The sheer violence of the crash, the high-profile nature of the casualties, drew the eyes of every federal investigator in the country. They dug through the wreckage, and then they dug into the Grandier Empire. Without Julian's constant manipulation and Silas's cover-ups, the intricate web of shell companies and forged guarantees unraveled in weeks. The $2 billion fraud was laid bare on the front page of every global newspaper. Valerie Quinn was arrested attempting to board a flight to non-extradition territory. The board of directors was dissolved and the empire collapsed into dust. Elara Sterling's name was cleared. Posthumously, she was rebranded not as a seductress, but as a whistleblower who had been backed into a fatal corner by the men who sought to destroy her. We often believe that love is a sanctuary, a safe harbor from the ruthless machinery of the world. But sometimes the most dangerous predators don't bare their teeth. They offer a charming smile, a tailored suit, and a promise of forever. Elara's tragedy is a chilling reminder to guard your trust fiercely, to question the golden cages you are invited into, and to never underestimate the absolute devastation a betrayed heart can unleash. If you found yourself captivated by Elara's dark journey for justice, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to the channel for more stories exploring the darkest, most thrilling corners of human nature.